Hello there, and welcome back to the Codex. So, I can bet that you probably clicked onto this video thinking that the title was clickbait, but I can promise you by the time you leave this video, you're going to realize, wow, the Coda Mire is actually the new best slam melee in the entire game. So let's go ahead and hop into the build here and talk about why that might be. So if you look at the base stats here, there's nothing extraordinarily unique aside from the fact that it does have 40% base status chance, which is pretty high, because that means that with just Galvanized Elementalist you hit 88% status chance, which is pretty chunky for only one mod increasing your status. Aside from that though, it's, you know, just a basic melee. The unique thing is the unique trait here, which says Slam Attacks apply Toxin status effects. So you get a forced Toxin proc on every slam hit. So you think, okay, if we're always going to have a forced Toxin proc on slams, let's build this into a Toxin-focused slam attack melee. So we do exactly that. We have Prime Fever Strike here to scale up the Toxin dot scaling percentage, and then the rest of it is pretty much exactly what you would expect from a slam elementalist build. We have Organ Shatter, we have Reflex for the 5x multiplier to the damage of a heavy slam. We have Seismic Wave, which is multiplicative, so this triples your slam damage, our base damage of course. We have a Smite mod because dots like Toxin double dip this, so this is a huge damage increase. Elementalist again for more status chance, and the 1.8x status damage multiplier, and of course Sack Steel to make those heavy attacks do almost guaranteed crits. It's about 97% crit chance, because it has a pretty low base crit chance, which makes the weapon look partially unimpressive, again, looking at the base stats. But let's go ahead and see what these forced Toxin procs look like. So let's hit this guy here, and you can see we get that forced, again, Toxin dot. It's like, okay, 20k damage, 20k, 20k, 20k. We don't have any kills yet, so we don't have the Galvanized Reflex stacked up. Let's go ahead and make it a little bit easier for the weapon by summoning some lower level enemies, because it's not doing very well. So let's kill these guys. And let's summon in just some level 1s to kill. And we'll do a single slam here, and we will have our Galvanized and Elementalist stacks built up. So let's get rid of these guys. Go back to the 225s, and here we go. So now here's our full damage slam. We saw like 72,000 damage, and here's a, 200,000, 180,000 ticks on guys that are close by. Again, 60,000 damage, 100,000 to 200,000 Toxin dots. This looks already not super bad, but it's like, okay, how is this better than the Magistar? How is this better than the Sampites, or the Slampates, I like to call it? Well, if you notice, this is applying a forced Toxin dot, but it's also applying a forced lifted on the enemy. And then you realize, oh, I should probably run melee Afflictions on this weapon. So, what melee Afflictions does is it says enemies affected by status effects gain 6 additional stacks when they're knocked down or flung by melee attacks. But what it actually does is when you apply the lifted status, it actually doubles that, and it applies 12. So we're going to go from 1 to 13 Toxin stacks, which is a little bit of a damage multiplier. Let's go ahead and showcase that. We of course need to get our Galvanized stack set up, and there we go. You can see those guys were obliterated. There's a 6 million Toxin dot. There's a 4.7 million, 5 million. Now keep in mind that Toxin dots, they tick 6 times, but those guys are dying to the very first one. For example, the 5 million dot that you saw. But if they didn't die, it would have done that 6 times, which means that the total damage would have been 30 million damage of Toxin dots, which is just an insane amount of damage to do in a single slam attack, and that's not even counting the initial damage from the slam itself. Let's go ahead and do that again, just to showcase that that was not a fluke. Yeah, millions, 4.4 million, 5.1 million. Yeah, but right now, we're just using pure Toxin. What if we change the progenitor element to cold, and then the cold is going to combine with the Toxin and make it viral? Now, we're still going to have the forced Toxin proc, which is going to give us 13 procs again, per usual, always. But we still have an 88% normal status chance after Galvanized Elementalist is stacked up. So there's a very high probability that we also get a max stack of viral procs, which is a 4.25x damage multiplier. So if we were doing 5 million before, we're now going to do potentially 20 million damage when the viral goes off, because again, it's not guaranteed. Let's go ahead and see that. We've got to get our Galvanized stacks again. can see 10 viral was on that. We just did 10 million damage to that guy. You saw there was 10 viral stacks and 13 toxin stacks, which is actually insane. Absolutely insane for one slam. Let's keep doing this here. So 4.7 million. There was a 21 million. So that was a singular toxin tick of 21 million damage, which means that that would do over 120 million damage if it were to do its full 6 ticks of 21 million. That would be 126 million damage, which is absurd. There's another combination, though, that's very, very funny to do on this weapon, and that's if you change, again, the progenitor element. Now let's change it to heat damage. Now the heat is going to combine with the toxin and become gas. We're now going to get 10 stacks of gas and the 13 toxin procs thanks to Affliction. So we're doubling up on the dots, which again are going to be multiplied by Elementalist and the Smite mod. And the more grouped up enemies are, the more insane these gas procs are going to be. So if we jump in the middle of a group here like this, everyone just dies. And that was without galvanized stacks, by the way. Now let's see the damage with galvanized stacks. Yeah, they die so hard that you can barely even see any procs occur. Let's do that again. Those guys, I didn't even hit. I just spawned in another 20 guys, and they instantly died from the leftover gas clouds because they did so much damage. That is insane. Yeah, this is ridiculous. That's 700,000 you saw there. That was just the gas on top of what the toxin would have been. Yeah, so just to show that this is not a fluke, by the way, or something that only happens in the simulacrum, let's go ahead and hop into a regular mission and do just a minute or so of slaying some regular enemies in a conjunction survival, for example. Before we hop in there, one really funny thing to note is that I was not using a companion or any buffs that whole time, obviously, because I want to show the weapon by itself. So this frame has nothing on that buffs anything. No arcanes, no mods, no archon shards that buff any damage, and I had no companion. But typically, of course, in real life, you will run a companion, which means that you could benefit from Tenacious Bond. So I did not have this extra 1.2x crit multiplier, and since this weapon only hits regular yellow crits, because we're only at about 97% crit damage, we go from 4.6 to 5.8x crit damage. Going from 4.6 to 5.8 is a 26% damage increase. So I just increased the damage that you saw in the simulacrum by over a quarter, which is ridiculous because it was already like a level cap amount of damage. So I'm going to go ahead and keep this on to show you a real scenario. And just put on my test revenant here, which again, this frame has no buffs on it whatsoever. These are just parkour shards. And let's hop in that survival. All right, here we are in the survival. And you will see that this absolutely performs the same way. Everything dies. Everything dies so fast, in fact, that we're really not even going to get a chance to see the dots occur because almost everyone just dies from the initial hit. Because these guys aren't even as tanky as the people in the simulacrum here because they're only 180, for example, and they're not all heavy gunners. So yeah, we just kill everything, and every time that we cause those gas procs to occur, not only do you kill, again, the original enemies that you actually hit, but those gas procs add that slight AoE, and your insane damage extends even further beyond the range of your melee slam. So the gas build is probably the way that a lot of you are going to want to go. Yeah, this is absolutely unholy. Let's go ahead and wait until an Acolyte spawns in and see what it does to them. Alright, so here's the Acolyte. Keep in mind that Acolytes have a cap to the amount of stats effects you're allowed to apply to them, and since they're factionless, we're not benefiting from a Smite mod at all. And it still is probably going to be pretty good. Yeah, as you can see, it chunks their health, and those dots do real chunky damage. And there we go. He's dead. So even against Acolytes, it's quite effective. And of course, against regular enemies, you melt them, because it turns out doing over 100 million toxin damage is pretty effective. So if you guys like this video, let me know. The best way you can support the channel is by subbing if you haven't already. Leave a comment, like the video, drop a comment down below, tell me about how you like the Mire, for example. You can definitely look forward to more of these Coda videos coming out. I'm probably going to be doing the Sporifex very soon, for example, because that is also an absolute beast. So, hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.